Hmm.
Woohoo!
Wow. So, episode number 4. First, we start off with talking about why beliefs are important.
Yeah.
We talked about how to evaluate beliefs.
Uh-huh.
And one thing that came up when we were talking about evaluating beliefs was how hard it is to remove yourself from the equation.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're the one who's doing the believing.
You're the one that is evaluating them.
Right, exactly. And you're naturally going to sort of self-referentially reinforce your own beliefs. So today I want to talk about how to remove ourselves a little bit. Right? If there's some tactics or techniques we can do to remove ourselves from the equation a little bit. One that I kind of feel is under-discussed and maybe the most important, but also maybe the hardest, is self-acceptance. Right? Accepting who you are or what you are as a person.
Yeah.
So I think we all have fantasies about ourselves. Once again, going back to what we discussed as children being sort of the center of the universe. Right? Our sort of self-centeredness being part of that illusion. Right?
Yeah.
Let's start with our historicity.
Okay.
What are some aspects of your own history that you feel like inform your beliefs?
It's like every part of my life that I've lived has affected my beliefs just because it's my life and that's how my beliefs are formed from living my life and people telling me things, etc. But some areas of my life or some time periods might affect my beliefs more. And obviously, when I'm really young, it's going to be when my beliefs are affected the most by everything and everyone, because that's when my beliefs are actually formed.
I think that you bring up an important point, though, that perhaps the greatest influence on our beliefs happens when we're younger.
Yeah.
And that happens before we're even conscious of being able to form beliefs. Right? So it happens unconsciously.
Those things are connected too, because yeah, it's like these things happen before we're even consciously able to like realize what beliefs are, and that's the reason why these beliefs are so strong and so long lasting. These beliefs, you don't think of them as beliefs because you barely even know how to think yet when you're that young. You just think of them as these facts. Like this is what the world is because this is what my parents have told me, and this is what I have seen.
To some degree, what you're saying is our belief structures, our foundational belief structures, are formed before we have the ability to ever even evaluate those belief structures.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which makes that, like a very tricky problem for any human being. Because the earlier beliefs are the more foundational and the stronger ones, and then all of a sudden you're using those, whatever they may be, to evaluate everything else. Your personal history is a big deal.
When I moved to Belize, and I was able to actually live in Belize. Like I lived in New York City for the first 9 years of my life, and then I moved to Belize, and now it's been like 4 years, almost 5 years. And I feel like at this point, especially considering now is when I'm like a teenager, when I'm kind of learning about myself and learning how to become my own person, Belize has affected me just as much, if not more, as New York has.
Location matters, right? Like just the very place where you are.
Yeah.
Right? And then secondly, change is very important because it gives you a new perspective at a different point in your life where you might be more capable of reevaluating some of those earlier beliefs. One of the things that affect our beliefs about ourselves that's hard to remove are our strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
It's hard to honestly assess our strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
What So let's talk about that. Like, what do you think are some of your weaknesses?
Like, I guess one of my weaknesses would be, like, I'm pretty socially anxious. So talking to you isn't that hard, and I like talking to my friends and stuff. Talking to strangers, and especially like strange adults, and especially strange adults in like positions of authority, is just so hard for me, because the stress just builds on me, and I have no clue what to say, and I don't know how to give off the right impression. It's just like, it's kind of hard to explain how my brain works then, because I don't really know how my brain works.
Right. Well, I think that you bring up some important points there. One is that as human beings, we don't spend a lot of time examining our own strengths and weaknesses. But, it's important to understand what your own weaknesses are when you're assessing beliefs. And, that's when you have to be honest with yourself, right? And it seems like you should be able to be honest with yourself, but I think that a lot of people have problems with that.
Yeah.
Well, so let's flip it. What would you say some of your strengths are?
Well, I like to think that I'm fairly intelligent.
Where do you think that belief comes from?
Just mostly the way that I interact in the world, and also maybe I'm like an egomaniac or something. But I just like going in my own head, and thinking about the way that I think things, and thinking about the way that I go through things. I feel like I think things through in a smart way.
How much is your assessment of your own intelligence affected by other people's perception of you?
I would say it's pretty affected by other people's perception of me. I feel like from the people I've interacted with, they've I feel like I've gotten more positive affirmation than negative.
How much of the reinforcement that you've gotten from others about your own intelligence is because you're pretty?
I don't know. I don't really think there's a good way to base that, but I would guess that people are more open to people that are conventionally attractive having other positive traits than people that aren't conventionally attractive having positive traits. They look at you for half a second, maybe. They look at your picture, and they make up this little scale in their head that's okay, how attractive is this person, based on a bunch of things that society has made up over hundreds and thousands of years. But they make up this little scale in their head, and they set you on that scale, and then instantly, because of that scale, because of the way they see you on that scale, they decide just what all of your other traits are without ever interacting with you once.
If someone's physical attractiveness affects how intelligent we think they are, and more to the point, how much we trust them and their opinions. And we've already said that we don't usually hold beliefs based on a thorough analysis of that particular belief, but because we trust the person who gave us that belief. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's super messed up.
Well, and we talked about the lack of consensus in the world on the nature of the universe. And when we consider that as humans, we judge someone's trustworthiness based on their physical appearance, it shouldn't be too surprising that we have a bunch of different beliefs that don't really match, because we're not really using logic.
Yeah.
We're using prettiness.
Yeah, it's a fantastic example of how stupid everyone and everything is, and the whole idea of beliefs and trustworthiness is.
Well, so another thing that I think affects what we believe, and another way that we, the perceiver, gets in the way of assessing beliefs, is our own fears. Right? If we're afraid of something being true, we kind of tend to
not want to think it's true.
Correct. Can you give me some examples of certain beliefs that would be affected by that, by our internal fears?
Okay, I don't want to bring up death like I did last time, but literally everyone is scared of death in some way. It is so insanely like impossible for you to just like even conceptualize a world where you don't exist.
So we're talking about how we can help remove ourselves from the assessment of our beliefs.
Yeah.
And one of the ways is sort of taking an honest look at ourselves, right? Our history, our strengths and weaknesses, our fears. Another aspect that I'd like to talk about in terms of removing ourselves is investigation, right? And that is actually getting into investigating a subject thoroughly, getting into the facts of a situation can help you step outside of yourself, because facts and data don't really care about your previous beliefs.
Yeah.
And if you let them speak to you to some degree, they can help you step outside of the beliefs in the you that already exists. What are some beliefs that you have that you think could be subject to further investigation?
Well, like death, like I don't think it would actually affect a ton of your other beliefs.
So if you believe that this is just sort of a test world, right? Or one of, a beginning life. And then, your main life, even though if it's unexpressed or unconscious, that your main life is after this one.
Yeah.
Right? Do you think it could affect how you treat the world and others in this world?
It could definitely like make you view your actions in this life as more inconsequential. I feel like generally you will only be an asshole if you're choosing to let that belief contribute to your want to be an asshole.
Logically, we could see that these fundamental beliefs, or these philosophical beliefs, sort of form this pyramid, this logical pyramid, and a fundamental belief would affect all your other beliefs. It doesn't really seem to be that way in real life.
Especially since we always talk about how we have like contradictory beliefs. These fundamental beliefs can be totally contradictory to everything else in your life, and you just won't care about that.
The one thing I would say is that although we can segment those beliefs, right, and our core beliefs don't necessarily affect our day-to-day beliefs and actions, there's a certain power when you integrate those things, right, and create a clear internal consistency. So another way that you can kind of use investigation to step outside of yourself, and you alluded to this a little bit earlier, is by spending time with people from communities that think differently than you do.
Yeah.
What are some communities that you feel like are different or radically different or somewhat different than who you are?
I don't know. North Korea. You see on the internet, like North Korea is this place where it's this like terrible place, and there's like this like dictator, and they're like completely not allowed to like look at like media from the outside world, and they like believe that like their like ruler is like God, or like the ruler's like grandfather was God. It could help me be like just like looking at something that is like clearly wrong according to like my own beliefs. It could help me kind of like look at it from like an outsider's perspective.
Well, at the very least, stepping into that culture and really getting to know how someone's mind who believes that stuff actually works could help you understand how your own mind works. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure.
So, as you know, when I was younger, in junior high and high school, I became very religious. And but I wasn't religious before that. And then, I spent maybe, 6 to 8 years being very religious. And then once again, I became relatively unreligious. I always felt that having lived mentally in two different worldviews gave me a unique perspective that was very valuable. something to consider is to step outside of yourself. It's important to seek out sources in people who are not like you.
Like if you're just like surrounded by people that are all, if you're surrounded by yes men, then you'll just believe that anything you think is true, and that just leads you to being like this egomaniac that's incapable of critical thought.
Well, it's an interesting point you bring up because it's one of the reasons that people who are born rich have a hard time stepping outside of themselves and assessing themselves honestly, because everyone has always fawned all over them because they're paid to do so.
Yeah, for sure. That's how it works.
Well, think of the implications of that for democracy. Because in a democracy, it's much easier to become a leader or a political ruler if you're wealthy.
Yeah.
And yet that very wealth blinds you to your own limitations as well as the reality for people who don't share that wealth.
Yeah, and you're like the worst person to be a leader, to like make the decisions, to make the decisions for other people, and like do these and like be in a position of power, because you will not know what is best for the people that you are actually controlling.
Yeah, it could be seen as an inherent or systematic flaw in the democratic process.
It is.
And I think we experience it every day. Let's talk about a third way that we can step outside of ourselves.
Okay.
And that's through peer review.
Peer review is having your peers, for me, like my classmates and stuff, look at something you think is true and telling you what they think about it.
In order for them to do that, though, you would have to express honestly something that you believe.
It can be super scary to expose yourself to the world, just like in general, expose one of your beliefs to the world, especially if that's one of your more fundamental beliefs or one of your more deep like beliefs that like you really believe in, and especially if you are actively exposing those beliefs so that they can get judged by these other people.
Would you agree that if you have a core belief that you are afraid to talk about with other people, it might be a warning sign that that belief might not be true?
Yeah, like that is a warning sign. Yeah, that is definitely a warning sign that that belief might not be true.
You seem to be a big believer in science.
I would. That's yeah. That's not the way I would describe myself, but like, yeah, it's true. No, yeah. It's not a way I would describe. Yes, I am a big believer in science.
Talk to me about peer review in science.
In science, basically, if you're publishing like a scientific study, if you're doing an experiment or like whatever, you have to get like your paper peer reviewed by like a ton of other scientists. And that's like one of the greatest parts of like science, and like and like part of the reason why it's so like credible.
A way that I like to express that is that I don't believe that scientific beliefs are more accurate because scientists are somehow morally superior to anyone else.
Yeah.
It's because they put out in detail their reasons for believing something and subjected it to the biggest smarty pants in the world, whose greatest desire is to disprove what you've said.
It shows that you have belief in like the things that led you to that belief. It shows that that's probably been like super researched. And if it has been confirmed by the biggest smarty pants in the world, it shows that, yeah, it's according to all these, it's pretty backed up by fact.
So listen, we're about out of time.
Yeah.
But, I think we've come across 3 important ways that you can sort of step outside of yourself.
Yes.
In evaluating your own beliefs and get away from that self-referential paradox, right? One is by accepting who you are. Another is by doing outside analysis and investigation and really getting into the facts. And the third is expressing your beliefs frankly to your peers and listening to their criticism of what you believe.
Yeah.
All true, but none of them easy, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, although it's hard, it seems like you actually can step outside of yourself eventually and evaluate your own beliefs.
Yeah. Next week, we're going to be talking about how our beliefs are influenced by the biological and historical presences in our lives.
And then that'll be like 5 videos on beliefs. We're done then, right?
We're talking a lot about beliefs, but that video will be the final video in our belief series.
Awesome.
We'll see you next Friday, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Next Friday. See you then. Bye-bye.